Okay, imagine it's World War II. The United States Navy is the most powerful maritime force on the planet. Discipline, precision, deadly accuracy. But then, there was the USS William D. Porter. If you think you're having a bad day at work, just wait until you hear about the crew of this destroyer. This isn't just a story about bad luck. It's a story about a ship so cursed, so clumsy, and so chaotic that it, and I am not making this up, accidentally launched a live torpedo at the President of the United States while he was watching. It is widely considered the unluckiest ship in the history of the U.S. Navy. Today, we are going to dive into the absolutely insane true story of the Willie D., the ship that fought the Nazis, the Japanese, and apparently Franklin D. Roosevelt. Before we watch the disaster unfold, do me a favor. Destroy that like button like the Willie D. destroyed everything it touched. And if you love crazy history, hit subscribe and comment "Oops" down below. Let's set sail. Chapter 1: A Cursed Beginning. The USS William D. Porter, DD-579, was a Fletcher-class destroyer commissioned in July 1943. On paper, she was a beautiful, deadly warship. In reality, she was a floating disaster waiting to happen. Her captain was Lieutenant Commander Wilford A. Walter, a capable man who had no idea that fate had decided to ruin his career. The trouble started on day one. As the ship was leaving the harbor for her first big mission, the crew forgot to fully raise the anchor. As they backed out of the dock, the anchor swung wild. It caught the railing of a sister ship anchored next to them. With a screech of tearing metal, the Porter ripped the railings, life rafts, and other equipment right off the other ship. It was like backing your car out of the driveway and taking the neighbor's mailbox, fence, and front door with you. Captain Walter apologized, but he had no time to be embarrassed. They had a top-secret mission. Chapter 2: The Secret Mission. November 1943. The stakes were incredibly high. The William D. Porter was chosen to be part of an elite escort convoy. Their job? To protect the massive battleship USS Iowa. Why was the Iowa so important? Because on board the Iowa was the President of the United States, Franklin D. Roosevelt. He was traveling across the Atlantic in absolute secrecy to meet with Winston Churchill and Joseph Stalin at the Tehran Conference. This was the most important VIP transport of the entire war. The Porter was told, "Do not make any noise. Do not use the radio. Maintain absolute radio silence to avoid Nazi U-boats." Chapter 3: The Depth Charge Disaster. The convoy was sailing through rough waters. German submarines, U-boats, were a constant threat. Everyone was on high alert. Suddenly, boom! A massive explosion rocked the ocean. The entire convoy panicked. The USS Iowa immediately began evasive maneuvers, thinking they were under attack by a German submarine. The other destroyers turned their sonar on, hunting for the enemy. But there was no German submarine. It turned out that a sailor on the William D. Porter had accidentally knocked a live depth charge, an underwater bomb, off the stern of the ship. The safety mechanism had not been set properly. It fell into the water and detonated. The Porter had to break radio silence, which was strictly forbidden, to admit, sorry, that was us. We dropped a bomb on ourselves." The admiral on the Iowa was furious. He stared at the Porter with pure hatred. But Captain Walter promised it wouldn't happen again. He was wrong. Chapter 4: Torpedo Drill Gone Wrong. November 14, 1943. The weather cleared up. President Roosevelt, being a man who loved the Navy, asked to see a demonstration of the fleet's power. He sat in his wheelchair on the deck of the USS Iowa, enjoying the fresh air. The admiral ordered the destroyers to simulate a torpedo attack on the Iowa. It was supposed to be a drill. The plan was simple. The destroyers would aim their torpedo tubes at the Iowa, go through the firing sequence, but, and this is the most important part, not actually fire the torpedoes. The primers, the gunpowder charges that launched the torpedo, were supposed to be removed. The William D. Porter took its position. They aimed their tubes at the USS Iowa. The huge battleship was only 6,000 yards away. On the bridge of the Porter, the officers called out the commands. Fire 1. Torpedo firing. Fire 2. Torpedo firing. Then came Fire 3. Whoosh! A sailor on the deck watched in horror as a live torpedo hissed out of tube number 3 and splashed into the water. It armed itself and began speeding directly toward the USS Iowa. Chapter 5, Don't Shoot the President. Panic exploded on the bridge of the William D. Porter. "Did you fire that?" the captain screamed. "Yes, sir. No, sir. Oh, God." They had to warn the Iowa. But remember, they were under strict orders for radio silence. If they used the radio, the Germans might hear them. So the captain tried to use a signal lamp, flashing lights. But the nervous signalman messed up. Instead of flashing torpedo in the water, he accidentally signaled, "We are reversing at full speed." The torpedo was getting closer. The president was right in its path. The captain shouted, "Forget the radio silence. Get on the radio." The radio man grabbed the mic and screamed, "Lion, Lion, turn right, torpedo in the water." Lion was the code name for the Iowa. On the deck of the Iowa, the alarm blared. Torpedo on starboard bow. President Roosevelt, hearing the commotion, didn't want to go inside to safety. He reportedly asked his Secret Service agent to wheel him closer to the railing so he can see the torpedo. His Secret Service agent actually pulled out his pistol to shoot at the torpedo, which would have done nothing. The massive battleship Iowa turned hard. It was a race against time. Boom! The torpedo hit the wake of the ship. It exploded just behind the Iowa, shaking the massive vessel but missing the hull by mere feet. President Roosevelt was safe, but the USS William D. Porter was in deep, deep trouble.
Chapter 6. You are under arrest. Moments later, the Iowa turned its massive 16-inch guns directly at the William D. Porter. They thought the destroyer had gone rogue or was controlled by German spies. "Cease fire, or we will blow you out of the water," the radio crackled. The entire crew of the William D. Porter was placed under arrest. It was the first time in U.S. history that an entire naval ship's crew was arrested at sea. They were ordered to sail to Bermuda immediately for trial. As they sailed away in shame, the captain must have wondered how his career had gone from promising officer to the man who almost assassinated the president in less than 48 hours. Chapter 7. The Trial and the President's Mercy. When the William D. Porter arrived in Bermuda, the ship was surrounded by armed Marines. The crew was grilled for days. The Navy was terrified that there was a traitor on board. Eventually, a young torpedo man named Lawton Dawson broke down. He admitted the truth. He had simply forgotten to remove the primer from the torpedo tube. When the command to fire was given, the gunpowder ignited and the weapon launched. In the panic, he had tried to throw the evidence, the used casing, into the ocean to hide his mistake. The Navy sentenced Dawson to 14 years of hard labor. The career of Captain Walter was effectively ruined. But then something amazing happened. President Franklin D. Roosevelt heard about the sentence. FDR was a man with a sense of humor, and he knew it was an accident. He personally intervened and pardoned the torpedo man. "It was just a mistake, boys," was the sentiment. No one went to prison. However, the Navy wasn't as forgiving as the president. They decided that the William D. Porter was too dangerous to be around important people. Chapter 8. The Frozen Exile. The Navy banished the Porter to the most remote, boring, and miserable place they could find, the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. For months, the crew sat in the freezing cold, guarding nothing. It was a punishment. While other ships were fighting for glory in the Pacific, the Willie D was fighting frostbite. But the ship's reputation had spread across the entire fleet. It became the butt of the greatest joke in U.S. Navy history. Whenever another American ship passed the William D. Porter, the other crew would get on the radio or shout through megaphones. They didn't say, "Hello." They didn't say, "At ease." They shouted, "Don't shoot, we're Republicans." For context, FDR was a Democrat. The joke was that the Porter only shot at Democrats. Chapter 9. Redemption in the Pacific. By 1945, the war was reaching its climax. The Navy needed every ship they had for the invasion of Okinawa. Desperate for firepower, they finally called the William D. Porter out of exile. The crew was eager to prove themselves. They were tired of being a joke. And to their credit, they fought bravely. In the Philippines and Okinawa, the Porter shot down several Japanese aircraft and provided excellent shore bombardment support. They were finally acting like a real warship. But the curse of the Willie D was just waiting for the grand finale. Chapter 10. The Strangest Sinking in History. June 10th, 1945. The Battle of Okinawa. The sky was filled with Japanese kamikaze planes. These were suicide pilots who would crash their explosive-laden planes directly into American ships. It was terrifying. At 8:15 a.m., a lone kamikaze plane dropped out of the clouds. It was an antique wooden bomber, aiming straight for the William D. Porter. The gunners on the Porter were ready. They opened fire. Bang, bang, bang. Their aim was perfect. They shot the plane. The kamikaze lost control. It missed the ship. The crew cheered. They had dodged the bullet. The plane crashed into the ocean about 50 yards away from the ship. It slipped beneath the waves. The captain breathed a sigh of relief. We got him. But then, physics happened. The plane, loaded with explosives, kept moving underwater. Like a torpedo, it glided directly underneath the hull of the William D. Porter. 3 seconds later, kaboom! The bomb on the plane exploded directly under the center of the ship. The force was so massive that it lifted the entire 2,000-ton destroyer out of the water. It snapped the ship's spine. The ship slammed back down, broken. Water rushed in. The Willie D. was finished. Chapter 11. The Final Miracle. The order was given. Abandon ship. The sailors jumped into the oil slick. But here is the final twist ending of the story. The William D. Porter was cursed. It ripped anchors off other ships, dropped bombs on itself, and shot at the president. It was destroyed by a plane that had already crashed. But in that final sinking, not a single crew member died. Every single sailor made it off the ship alive. It was the unluckiest ship with the luckiest crew. As the William D. Porter slipped beneath the waves for the last time, the crew floated in their life rafts, watching her go. And somewhere, maybe, just maybe, the other ships in the fleet whispered one last time, "Don't shoot, we're Republicans."
And that rests the case of the USS William D. Porter, a ship that tried to kill the president, got exiled to Alaska, became a floating meme, and was finally sunk by a plane that was technically already underwater. You literally cannot write a script this crazy. I want to know what you guys think. Was this ship cursed or just incompetent? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you survived this story without accidentally firing a torpedo, hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe and click the bell because next week we are talking about a man who survived 2 atomic bombs. You don't want to miss that. Thanks for watching, and try not to drop any depth charges on your way out.